In the heart of Zuberi city, the bustling bus station pulsed with life. Vendors shouted over each other, selling roasted maize and vibrant kitenge fabrics, while travelers weaved through the chaos, guarding their luggage like treasure. Towering above the clamor was Rashidi, a notorious bus driver with a reputation as wild as his bright yellow bus. Plastered with bold slogans like, "No time to check time," the vehicle was infamous for skirting disasters on the dangerous highways. But this wasn't just any morning, it was the start of a holiday journey across the sprawling Bainway savannah. The bus groaned under the weight of its passengers, mothers soothing restless babies, traders gripping their precious goods, and students squeezed in with dreams of home shining in their eyes. What they didn't know was that this trip would be anything but ordinary. Amid the crowd was Mama Toby, a devout woman with a reputation for her unwavering faith. She boarded the bus with her prayer beads, quietly observing Rashidi's hurried preparations. Her intuition told her that this journey would be no ordinary one. As the engine roared to life and Rashidi banged the side of the bus, signaling departure, Mama Toby whispered a prayer under her breath. She hoped for a smooth journey, though her heart was heavy with unease. Little did the passengers know, the journey they were embarking on would test their faith, courage, and unity like never before. Rashidi's reputation preceded him. Tales of his near misses and devil-may-care attitude had earned him both grudging admiration and whispered fears. He thrived on the adrenaline of weaving through narrow mountain roads and outracing thunderstorms that rolled across the plains. To him, driving was a test of skill, not caution. As the bus rolled out of the city, passengers exchanged wary glances. "He's reckless," one woman muttered to her neighbor. Mama Toby's serene demeanor contrasted sharply with the growing unease. She sat near the middle of the bus, her beads clicking rhythmically as she silently prayed. Seated next to her was Juma, a university student with earbuds firmly lodged in his ears. He'd heard the whispers about Rashidi, but his focus was on getting home in time for his sister's wedding. As the bus sped along, a chorus of honking horns and shouted warnings trailed in their wake. Yet, Rashidi was oblivious, his hands firmly gripping the wheel and his foot heavy on the pedal. The passengers clung to their seats, some whispering prayers of their own. Mama Toby turned to Juma. "Young man, when the time comes, you'll need to believe," she said cryptically. Juma gave her a puzzled look but said nothing. The sun blazed overhead as the minibus plunged deeper into the savannah, unaware of the trials that awaited them. The landscape of the Bainway savannah stretched endlessly before them, golden grasses waving under a harsh sun. It seemed peaceful, but the savannah was notorious for its hidden dangers. Hours into the journey, Rashidi's recklessness began to wear on the passengers. The bus swerved sharply to avoid a pothole, sending a woman's basket of mangoes tumbling to the floor. Frustrated murmurs spread among the passengers, but Rashidi paid no heed. Then came the first omen. A flock of guinea fowl darted across the road, forcing Rashidi to slam on the brakes. The bus skidded to a halt just inches away from a steep ravine. Gasps and cries filled the air as passengers clutched each other. Rashidi laughed it off, shaking his head. "Relax, everyone. I've got this," he said with misplaced confidence. But Mama Toby's eyes darkened. She leaned forward, addressing the driver. "This journey is not yours alone, Rashidi. You must take care, or the road will teach you its lessons the hard way." Rashidi's laughter faltered under her gaze, but he quickly recovered. "Don't worry, Mama. We'll get there in one piece," he said, revving the engine. As the bus lurched forward, a strange unease settled over the passengers. Mama Toby continued her prayers, her voice rising above the hum of the engine, as if summoning unseen forces for protection. At a small roadside stop, the bus paused for a quick break. Vendors approached the windows, offering roasted plantains and bottles of water. It was here that a stranger boarded the bus. He was a tall man with a quiet presence, dressed simply in a white kanzu. His eyes scanned the passengers before he settled into an empty seat at the back. The passengers barely noticed him, preoccupied with stretching their legs and grabbing snacks. But Mama Toby's eyes followed the stranger. There was something about him that set him apart. When she caught his gaze, he nodded slightly, almost as if acknowledging her thoughts. As the journey resumed, the stranger's deep voice carried through the bus. "This road has many stories," he said, seemingly to no one in particular. "Some end in laughter, others in tears. But every journey has its lessons." His words hung in the air, drawing curious glances. Juma, seated nearby, smirked. "What are you, some kind of philosopher?" he asked. The man's lips curved into a faint smile. "Perhaps," he replied. Mama Toby's heart quickened. She felt a presence in the stranger that she couldn't quite explain. As the bus rolled on, she found herself praying not just for safety, but for clarity about the mysterious man who had joined their journey. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the savannah. The bus's engine growled steadily, a reassuring rhythm for the weary travelers. But the peace was short-lived. As they approached a narrow bridge over a dry riverbed, they encountered an unexpected sight. A group of villagers stood in the middle of the road, waving their arms frantically. Rashidi slowed the bus reluctantly, muttering under his breath. The villagers explained that the bridge ahead was unstable, damaged by recent rains. Rashidi groaned in frustration, but the passengers were visibly relieved. "We can't risk it," Mama Toby said firmly. Rashidi reluctantly agreed, pulling the bus to a stop. As the passengers disembarked to stretch their legs, the stranger from the back of the bus walked to the front. He spoke softly to Rashidi, his words inaudible to the others. Whatever he said seemed to have an impact, as Rashidi's expression softened slightly. The group decided to wait for a solution. As the hours passed, the passengers formed small circles, sharing food and stories. Mama Toby took the opportunity to lead a small prayer group. The stranger joined them, his voice blending harmoniously with the others. "Faith," he said, "is what holds us together in moments like these." The passengers who participated felt a strange sense of calm, even as the challenges of the road loomed ahead. Night fell swiftly over the savannah, cloaking the landscape in darkness. The passengers settled back into their seats, hoping to reach the next town before midnight. Rashidi, chastened by the day's events, drove more cautiously. But as they approached a dense thicket, shadows emerged from the roadside. Bandits armed with crude weapons blocked the road, their faces obscured by scarves. Panic erupted in the bus. "Stay calm," Rashidi shouted, though his voice betrayed his fear. The bandits demanded money and valuables, their voices harsh and threatening. Passengers scrambled to comply, trembling as they handed over their belongings. Mama Toby remained seated, her prayer beads clicking furiously. The stranger stood, his presence commanding attention. "Leave them," he said to the bandits, his voice firm but calm. The bandits hesitated, unnerved by his composure. "Who are you to tell us what to do?" one of them barked. The stranger stepped forward, his eyes blazing with an intensity that silenced them. "This bus is under divine protection," he said. "You will not harm these people." The bandits exchanged uneasy glances. One by one, they backed away, their resolve crumbling. As they disappeared into the night, the passengers erupted into relieved murmurs. Mama Toby's voice rose in a song of thanksgiving, joined by others who had witnessed the stranger's inexplicable authority. The atmosphere in the bus shifted after the bandit encounter. The passengers, once skeptical and divided, began to bond over their shared experience. Conversations flowed more freely, and laughter occasionally rippled through the group. Mama Toby continued to lead prayers, her unwavering faith inspiring those around her. Even Rashidi seemed transformed, his reckless bravado replaced with a newfound humility. The stranger, though still quiet and reserved, became a central figure among the passengers. He offered words of encouragement and shared parables that resonated deeply with the group. "Faith," he said during one of their stops, is not just belief but action. It's what you do when fear threatens to overwhelm you. His words lingered in their minds, a beacon of hope amid uncertainty. As they resumed their journey, the bus felt less like a collection of strangers and more like a community. The passengers took turns keeping watch, ensuring that no one felt alone in their vigilance. Mama Toby's prayers grew louder and more confident, her voice a rallying cry for the group. Together, they faced the challenges of the road, their unity and faith transforming their journey into something extraordinary. As dawn broke, the passengers awoke to find themselves deep in the heart of the Baneway savannah. The golden light illuminated the vast landscape, but it also revealed signs of trouble ahead. Rashidi spotted tire tracks on the dirt road, indicating that other vehicles had recently passed through, an unusual sight in such a remote area. Mama Toby's prayers grew louder, her sense of foreboding intensifying. The stranger, seated at the back of the bus, remained calm, his eyes scanning the horizon. Not long after, the bus came to a sudden halt. A tree had fallen across the road, blocking their path. Rashidi cursed under his breath, but the passengers quickly disembarked to assess the situation. As they worked together to clear the debris, a strange sense of unity emerged. Even the children, usually restless, helped in their own small ways. The stranger approached Rashidi and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Sometimes, delays are blessings in disguise," he said. Just as they cleared the road, a distant rumble caught their attention. A convoy of vehicles, armed and menacing, sped past in the opposite direction. The passengers froze, realizing the danger they had narrowly avoided. "If we hadn't stopped." Juma began, but his voice trailed off. Mama Toby nodded, her eyes filled with gratitude. "The hand of the divine is upon us," she said. The passengers returned to the bus, their faith bolstered by the near miss. As the journey resumed, the atmosphere inside the storm was one of quiet reflection and growing belief in the unseen forces guiding them. The day wore on, and the bus traversed increasingly rugged terrain. The heat was oppressive, and tempers began to fray. Yet, amidst the discomfort, the passengers found solace in small acts of kindness. A young mother shared her water with an elderly man, while a trader offered snacks to the children. Mama Toby continued her prayers, her voice a constant presence that seemed to soothe frayed nerves. As they climbed a steep incline, the bus's engine began to sputter. Rashidi pulled over, his face a mask of frustration. "It's overheating," he announced. The passengers groaned, but the stranger stepped forward, his calm demeanor steadying the group. "We'll rest here," he said. "Use this time to gather your strength." The passengers dispersed, some seeking shade under nearby trees while others formed small groups to chat. Mama Toby took the opportunity to lead another prayer circle. This time, more passengers joined her, their skepticism gradually replaced by a desire for comfort and hope. The stranger spoke softly, sharing a parable about perseverance and faith. His words resonated deeply, and even Rashidi found himself listening intently. When the engine finally cooled, the passengers boarded the bus with renewed determination. As they continued their journey, the challenges they faced seemed less daunting. The sense of unity that had begun to form was now a palpable force, driving them forward with a shared purpose. The journey was far from over, but the passengers of the storm were no longer just travelers, they were a community bound by faith and resilience. As the bus approached a small village nestled in a valley, the passengers noticed a commotion ahead. A group of villagers had gathered near a well, their voices raised in distress. Rashidi slowed the bus, and Mama Toby urged him to stop. "These people need help," she said firmly. The passengers disembarked, curious about the commotion. The villagers explained that their only water source had run dry, leaving them desperate for assistance. The passengers, moved by their plight, pooled their resources to provide what little water they had left. The stranger stepped forward, his calm presence commanding attention. "Faith is not just words," he said. "It's action. Let us help however we can. Under his guidance, the passengers and villagers worked together to dig a temporary channel to a nearby stream. The task was arduous, but the sense of unity and purpose made it bearable. By the time the water began to flow, the sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the village. The villagers expressed their gratitude, offering food and blessings in return. As the passengers returned to the bus, their spirits were lifted. The experience had reinforced their belief in the power of faith and collective effort. Mama Toby's prayers that evening were filled with gratitude, and even Rashidi found himself joining in. The journey continued, but the passengers knew they had gained an unexpected ally in the form of the villagers' blessings. The sky darkened ominously as the bus entered a stretch of road flanked by dense forests. The air grew heavy, and the first drops of rain began to fall. Rashidi gripped the wheel tightly, his earlier confidence replaced with a sense of unease. The passengers fell silent, their eyes fixed on the storm brewing outside. As the rain intensified, visibility decreased, and the road became treacherous. The bus skidded on the muddy path, eliciting gasps and cries from the passengers. Mama Toby's voice rose above the storm, her prayers a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. The stranger, seated at the back, remained calm, his presence a steady anchor for the frightened travelers. "Have faith," he said, his voice carrying over the roar of the storm. "This is but another trial on our journey." The bus came to a sudden halt as a massive tree crashed onto the road ahead. Rashidi cursed under his breath, but the stranger placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "This too shall pass," he said. The passengers disembarked, braving the rain to clear the debris. Their collective effort, fueled by faith and determination, proved successful. As the storm subsided, the passengers returned to the bus, drenched but invigorated. The experience had tested their resilience and strengthened their bond. The journey continued, but the storm within each of them had been calmed, replaced with a renewed sense of purpose and unity. The passengers were exhausted as the bus made a stop near a small clearing to rest for the night. The air was chilly, and the distant sound of nocturnal animals added an eerie undertone to the night. Most passengers huddled together under the open sky, their earlier unity giving them some comfort. Mama Toby led a quiet prayer circle, her voice low but filled with fervor. In the middle of the night, a faint cry echoed from the forest. It sounded like a child. The passengers froze, their hearts racing. "It could be a trap," Rashidi whispered, his voice shaking. The stranger stood up, his face calm but determined. "A cry for help is never ignored by those who walk in faith," he said. Against the protests of some passengers, he walked toward the sound, accompanied by Mama Toby and a few brave souls. They found a young boy, frightened and alone, near the edge of the forest. He explained that he had been separated from his family, who were fleeing a nearby village attacked by armed raiders. The passengers quickly decided to bring the boy aboard the bus. "We'll find his family," the stranger assured the group. Though weary, the passengers felt a renewed sense of purpose as they resumed their journey, determined to protect the boy at all costs. As dawn broke, the bus came upon a battered figure lying by the side of the road. The man, barely conscious, was dressed in tattered clothes, his body marked with bruises. Mama Toby insisted they stop to help him despite Rashidi's reluctance. The stranger carried the man onto the bus, laying him gently on a makeshift bed of blankets. The man introduced himself as Kamau, a farmer who had fought off bandits who raided his home. His family had escaped, but he was left behind, injured and without hope. The passengers cared for him, offering water and food. Slowly, Kamau began to recover, his gratitude evident in his tear-filled eyes. Kamau's story moved the passengers deeply, reminding them of the importance of resilience and solidarity. The stranger encouraged Kamau to share his story, and his words of survival inspired the group. As they traveled on, Kamau's presence became a symbol of the strength that faith and unity could provide in the face of adversity. The bus approached a desolate area, its vastness stretching endlessly under the midday sun. Rashidi hesitated, recalling stories of bandits who often ambushed travelers in such locations. The passengers grew tense, their earlier confidence wavering. Suddenly, a caravan of nomadic herders appeared on the horizon. They greeted the passengers warmly, offering fresh milk and water. The leader, an elderly man with kind eyes, spoke to the stranger in a language no one else understood. The stranger nodded, and the herders guided the bus to a safer path that avoided the dangerous areas. Before parting, the leader gifted the group a carved wooden staff, saying it was a symbol of protection. Mama Toby held the staff, feeling an unexplainable sense of peace. The passengers were awestruck, realizing that their prayers had been answered in a way they hadn't anticipated. As the bus neared its final stretch, fatigue and frustration began to creep back into the group. Some passengers questioned the stranger's influence and the constant detours. "Are we even going in the right direction?" one man demanded. The stranger remained calm, but Mama Toby addressed the group. "Faith is tested in moments of doubt," she said. "We've come this far together. Let us not falter now." Her words resonated with some, but others remained skeptical. That night, a violent storm forced them to take shelter in an abandoned church. Inside, the group's tensions erupted into arguments. The stranger intervened, his voice firm. "Unity is your greatest weapon. Do not let doubt destroy what you've built together." Slowly, the group reconciled, their bond stronger for having faced the storm within themselves. The journey's end was in sight when the bus was stopped at a makeshift roadblock. Armed men emerged, demanding payment to pass. Panic swept through the passengers, but the stranger stepped forward, his presence commanding respect. He spoke to the leader of the group, his tone calm but resolute. The armed men hesitated, seemingly swayed by his words. To everyone's astonishment, the leader allowed them to pass without taking anything. "Go in peace," he said, his eyes lingering on the stranger. The passengers were overcome with relief and awe. Rashidi, who had been skeptical of the stranger from the beginning, finally admitted, "You've saved us more times than I can count. I owe you my life." As they neared their destination, the boy they had rescued spotted his family waiting by the roadside. The reunion was emotional, and the passengers shared in the family's joy. Kamau, too, decided to stay in the village to rebuild his life. The passengers realized how much their journey had transformed them. They were no longer strangers but a family forged through trials and faith. Mama Toby's prayers had become a shared ritual, and even Rashidi had adopted a more cautious and respectful approach to his driving. At the final stop, the passengers disembarked, their hearts full of gratitude. They turned to thank the stranger, but he was gone. Mama Toby found a note where he had been seated. It read, "Faith is the bridge between fear and hope. Carry it with you always." The passengers stood in silence, each pondering the stranger's words. They knew his presence had been a blessing, guiding them through their perilous journey. As each passenger reached their destination, they carried the lessons of the journey with them. Families were reunited, and stories of the miraculous trip spread throughout their communities. Mama Toby became a beloved figure, her prayers and unwavering faith inspiring many. Rashidi, now a changed man, vowed to drive with care and respect, earning the trust of future passengers. Months later, the passengers of The Storm gathered for a reunion. They shared stories of how the journey had changed their lives, each recounting moments of faith and unity that had carried them through. Mama Toby led a prayer of thanksgiving, her voice strong and filled with joy. The wooden staff, now adorned with carvings of their journey, stood as a symbol of their shared miracle. They knew they had been part of something extraordinary, a journey that had transformed their faith and bound them together forever. Their story became a legend in the Bainway Savannah, a testament to the power of unity, resilience, and the unseen hand of divine intervention.